Hello guys, welcome to another session on answer writing program. So here we will be discussing a question from Merton and then we will look at how you're going to solve the question. Okay, so here is a question and this is a previous year question actually. So using Merton's concept of manifest and latent function, I presume that you already know, you have studied the thinker, you know what is manifest function, you know what is subjective predisposition, objective manifestation, latent functions and other things. And by using that, you need to explain the persistence of corruption in Indian society. It's a very simple, straightforward question. So, guys, let's look into the answer. So how you will be proceeding? You will have to first talk about Merton, right? And then you need to give an idea about manifest function. Then you will talk about latent function. You will also talk about other thinkers if possible. So you can talk about corruption also because, it is directly mentioned. That's actually the question. So you can define corruption. So you can say corruption as deviation from norms, right? That's the way you need to define, right? So here you can define corruption as behavior deviating from normal duties for personal gain or deviating from the norms, right? And that persists in Indian society despite being widely condemned, despite having a lot of laws. So how we are going to apply Robert Merton's sociological framework of manifest function, which is intended and recognized outcomes, and also latent functions, which is unintended consequences, often called as hidden consequences. We'll try to analyze that. So you need to talk about, remember, you need to talk about functions, right? Dysfunctions also. So corruption, when we see, normally you talk about dysfunction, right? And then you need to divide that manifest dysfunction, hidden dysfunction also. But there are some functions for corruption. That's why, see guys, if something is existing in society, it is necessarily fulfilling some function for someone. That's why it is existing. Otherwise, it won't be there. So there are manifest functions and hidden functions also for corruption. That also you need to explain. So your answer should be like, you talk about corruption, you talk about manifest, latent, you use the term subjective predisposition, objective manifestation, hidden consequences and other things, and then talk about function, dysfunction, manifest, latent function, manifest, latent dysfunction, and talk about the net balance. So remember the functional paradigm that we discussed. That's exactly what you need to write this answer, right? So here we can explore how corruption serves various roles that contribute to its endurance in society. So let's talk about manifest functions of corruption. What is first? Fast delivery of services, right? Overcoming the bureaucratic ritualism, red tapism, and again, showcasing loyalties, benefits for marginalized group also there. I'll come to that. So again, income supplement for officials. Okay, so all the institutionalizing the demand management. So all these are what you can talk about. And I hope you know this already. So I just want to, mention about this. So manifest functions are visible and intended outcomes of corruption. You can see, corruption offers certain groups, certain benefits, certain group or certain individual, certain benefit in specific context. So faster delivery of service. So corruption, in fact, expedite the processes in bureaucratic, situations like the red tapeism and other things you can ignore, get things done faster. So that offer individual the quick access to service. So someone who don't want to be in the queue and want to get the service done, he's willing to pay. So in that context, it is functional for that person. It is functional for the person who's getting that money also. But of course, it comes along with certain other hidden dysfunction also. That again, we need to discuss because this is going to disadvantage some other sections. Okay. So example, if you see bribes to speed up, passport issuance or land registry processes, all these you can write as an example. Overcoming bureaucratic ritualism, just like what we have mentioned, it helped to navigate the rigidity and inefficiency of bureaucratic procedures. And, it's actually often caused by excessive rules and delays. And then talk about, corruption act as means of expressing the allegiance to specific groups through nepotism and favoritism, like allocating contracts or jobs to allies or the relatives. And then certain communities like, discriminated against politically or socially, corruption may become a tool for accessing resources which are otherwise denied to them. Members of disadvantaged group, they bribe officials to bypass, certain discriminatory practices. But again, there are a lot of dysfunctions also when we talk about this. But here, see, when we talk about functions, we try to manipulate the functions, right? So as a functionalist, you need to think only in functional terms. Even crimes, we try to see in functional terms. When suicide, we try to see the functional terms. So corruption also, we'll try to see in functional terms because that's what you need to do when you're writing the paper. First, on the first side. Then we talk about the other side also, right? The latent function of corruption also. Now, again, income supplement for officials, it's self-explanatory, guys. Again, corruption becomes a mechanism for managing demands in institutions that in fact lack adequate resources or systems to handle them formally. So these are direct, right? Then what are the latent functions, which is the unintended consequences of corruption, right? So that actually perpetuate its existence, the existence of corruption, and provide structural or cultural benefit also. So here we are going to talk about the hidden benefits of corruption, like capital accumulation. Corruption indirectly facilitates investment and economic growth. As accumulated wealth find its way into the economy, that inject liquidity in the economy, that create demand in the economy, that create growth in the economy. Again, social cohesion against corruption. See, ironically, the corruption triggers movements to, remedy its effects that foster the social solidarity. For example, you can talk about Anna Hazare-led anti-corruption movement that eventually led to the government formation also, right? Again, recruitment of like-minded individuals. Corruption basically ensured that individuals comfortable with corrupt practices are integrated into the system. That will create a culture of continuity. We talk about, culture of poverty. So here, culture of corruption, right? Again, support for weak institutions. Corruption act as survival mechanisms for certain fragile political systems that actually enable them to function despite its inefficiencies. Then it's an alternative to violence. In some cases, you can take corruption, as non-violent way of resolving disputes or ensuring compliance in the absence of effective legal mechanisms. So there are no legal mechanisms. Otherwise, things might have turned violent, but corruption will help to solve that issue, amicably. Again, facilitating social mobility. Corruption serves as a shortcut to upward mobility. You can see many government officials, not only government, in private sector also, getting richer beyond their sources of income, right? So it is giving upward mobility for individuals who's lacking conventional means, such as, merit or opportunity, otherwise less salary. Or even with salary, you can see certain people, they go beyond their limits, right? Whatever they can earn in the entire 30 years, they can get in 1 month or one single corruption itself. Again, motivation for unpaid workers. So it actually offers a psychological and financial incentive to low-income workers, maintaining, their participation in the system. Now, talk about the manifest dysfunction, then latent dysfunction, and then net balance. Okay, so manifest dysfunctions, directly visible negative consequences of corruption. Like if you talk about favoritism and inequality, those who can afford bribes and give money, they receive preferential treatment that lead to inequality in service delivery. Others are getting disadvantaged. This lead to erosion of trust, right? So corruption undermines the public confidence in institution and governance. Loss of meritocracy. See, merit is sidelined in favor of nepotism. That will result in, you see the theory, elite self-recruitment, that theory you can talk about here. And that lead to inefficiency also in the system. Economic cost. In fact, corruption increases the cost of doing business that hampers the foreign investment and stunts economic growth. The opposite of what we discussed before. And criminalization of politics. It in fact enabled the politicization of criminals and the criminalization of political activities also, because everything can now be done with money. Privatization of public resources. So public assets are diverted into private hands through these corrupt practices. A lot of examples are there, but you don't want to talk specific example. You can generally mention this. Latent dysfunction, it lead to consumerism and status display, right? So corruption encourage conspicuous consumption, as wealth derived from, corruption is often flaunted to signify status, and so much of consumption that lead to consumerism. That lead to inflation and also parallel economy. That fuels black money and underground economies. So what will actually happen? Pump liquidity, that will increase the demand, and then inflation will be there. So distort the resource allocation, and it will inflate the prices actually. So it will significantly affect the other sections. Systemic inefficiency. So the culture of corruption reduces overall efficiency by prioritizing personal gain over the collective good. Okay, so again, perpetuation of this inequality that we talk about, unequal distribution of resource that worsen the societal disparities. Again, institutional inconsistency, the outcomes of corruption that often fail to align with the expectations that lead to uncertainty and dissatisfaction. So here we use Merton's concept of manifest function, manifest dysfunction, latent function, latent dysfunction to explain corruption. Perfect. So see, corruption is widely criticized, but Merton's framework highlight how manifest and latent functions contribute to its persistence in Indian society. Remember, guys, if something exists in society, it is necessarily fulfilling certain vital functions for the society. Otherwise, it won't exist. So if corruption is existing and corruption is continuing, it means it fulfills functions for the society, for the survival of society, for the existence of society. It fulfills both structural and individual need and serving as a mechanism to navigate, the inefficiencies, inadequacies, inequalities, inadequacies, etc. But its dysfunctions like eroding public trust, undermining meritocracy, perpetuating inequality, that outweigh the functional aspects. So that is necessitating, that we need to have some systemic reforms to minimize its impact and promote transparency. So the dysfunctions and functions, if you take, there are functions, but dysfunctions are more. So when you take the net balance, what is more? Dysfunctions are more. It will erode the public trust and systemic inefficiency and many things. So we need reforms, we need solutions, we need laws, we need implementation. So we have taken the net balance also. So this is how you'll be answering the question. So guys, that's about this session. Thank you so much for attending. If you're looking for any mentorship or test series or the course, check out the details in the description and you can get in touch with us. You can download the PDF also free of cost. And if you like the video, share it with your friends also. So see you guys in the next session. Thank you so much.